Yo, thank you, FANdation. We're back with another recap of our favorite I'm not crying show, FANdation. I'm your host, Anthony, and I'm going to do my best to be your guide for this far-out show as we're really actually picking up where episode 9 ended, where we saw Gale, Salvor, and Hari White overcome the threat of Telem Bond, as well as the unfathomable destruction of Terminus as Space Homelander, Brother Day, does the unthinkable and orders the destruction of the planet and all of its inhabitants. This episode is titled Creation Myths, which is a very intriguing title as it relates to the work of Isaac Asimov. In Asimov's novels, the concept of creation myths could be linked to the formation of the Galactic Empire and its earthly origins, which in itself is a monumental event that serves as something of a backdrop in the series. The rise of the FANdation, which itself is an organization dedicated to preserving knowledge in a time of impending galactic collapse, can be seen as a kind of modern-day creation myth. It chronicles the emergence of a new order, akin to the birth of a civilization, and the myths, legends, and ideologies that surround this transition, especially when you take into consideration the religion of the great Hari Seldon. Additionally, Asimov often delves into the idea of predicting the future through mathematical models, akin to the creation myths of ancient cultures that sought to explain the world's origins and purpose. In FANdation, the theme of creation myths may be a lens through which the show explores how beliefs, legends, and historical narratives shape the course of history in a futuristic setting. This episode has the potential to delve deep into the philosophical and sociological aspects of Asimov's work, examining how myths and stories can be as influential as any scientific discovery or technological advancement. Overall, like I said, it's a very intriguing title for a very, very satisfying end to an incredible season. I can't wait to start talking to you all about this finale. But first, do me a favor, if you're new here, please consider giving this channel a like and subscribe to keep up with all of the output that we do, whether it's FANdation, from movies or more in our analyses and breakdowns. Look, I'm really, really grateful for you guys for sticking around for this entire season. I know how much your time is valuable, and I truly, truly appreciate you giving me your time. Please hit that like button. The videos are getting some traction. I'm very happy. I think we're getting there. I really appreciate your time. And don't forget to enable notifications. This episode opens with Gale's familiarly British voice easing us into the episode while monologuing as we begin to witness the death, or at least re-witness the death of Hari White from a few episodes ago. But that's not exactly true, is it? Salvor and I are still in shock because we all thought we saw Hari drown a few episodes ago. We find out that Gale is actually the reason that Hari is still alive. In fact, Gale and Hari have been working together in secret as Gale actually orchestrated the events that saved Hari's life, using the very skills that she was taught by Telem Bond. Gale was somehow able to sense Hari's distress as he was drowning, and she could feel the very same sensations as Hari and began drowning herself. In an act of desperation and maybe a little self-preservation, Gale actually dominated the mind of one of the mentalics that was guarding Hari and forced him to free Hari from his chains, saving both their lives and giving Gale another opportunity to remind these fools that she's from the south side of Synnax. Hari and Gale beat the brakes off that guard and choked the life out of the guard while Gale made sure that nobody could hear his cries for help. Hari then swapped places with the guard by chaining him up the way that Hari was chained, and Gale was casting an extremely powerful illusion so that it would look like Hari was the one that died. Gale then helped Hari find a hole in the wall to hide in after he made his escape, and was able to hide her actions from Telem by counting primes. Yes, by counting primes with Hari. And that's why we saw Gale acting all strange in the woods a while back when she force-shoved Salvor across the room. And, okay. First thing, I think I owe Gale an apology, right? I know. I was the one talking about how we were watching Gale's villainous origin story back when Tellum revealed that Gale was absolutely aware and could feel Harry's death from a very large distance. Trust me, I am very, very relieved and happy to learn that Gale isn't the monster that I thought her to be, but you're telling me that nobody else thought she was going Dark Phoenix? I mean, we aren't 100% sure that she saved Harry or was saving herself because she was drowning too. But either way, it's interesting to see that she's actually growing in her capabilities and her power every time we see her. Gale explains that she and Harry had to work together in secret or risk being discovered by Tellum Bond. As they wrap up their recap of events for Salvor, the alarm goes off, and it warns our trio that Tellum's whole refugee camp of X-Men is making their way towards the ship. Their little leader, young Sheldon, he tries to convince our trio that, we're not here to fight, and Harry is skeptical and tells them straight up that's cap. They then shove a young girl with like a ornate neck tattoo to the front of the group, and this girl explains how Tellum was controlling them, all of them, the entire time, but she's gone now, and so they're free. Harry and Gale just look at each other for a second before Harry opens the door. And real quick, is anyone else liking this development between Harry and Gale? Like they know what the other is thinking with just a look? Anyway, Gale, Harry, and Salvor step out and the X-Men actually bow before them like, what? Hold that thought. We then switch back to Trantor, where Brother Dusk has been trapped ever since he mouthed off to Cleon the First. Dusk and Rue are desperately trying to find a way out of their prison when we see the arrival of Demerzel, and even Dusk seems like he knows that this isn't a good sign. Demerzel lets Dusk know that he and Rue are the first to enter that room in like 600 years. She then disables the cell door and enters the chamber she was once a prisoner in. Dusk is pissed as he feels betrayed by Demerzel, and Demerzel tells him that he's taking for granted his ignorance in the whole thing. As Demerzel is able to control the memories of the Cleon clones, they get the decency of being unaware, whereas Demerzel doesn't have that luxury. Further, she still feels love for Cleon the First, and she can't discern whether her feelings are sincere or programmed. Either way, she longs for Cleon the First and said he wasn't dawn, he wasn't day, he wasn't dusk, but rather Cleon the First was the whole journey of the sun across the sky. And damn, that was poetic. Right? She also admits that she hates him for his deception, with Rue suggesting that they work together to break Cleon the First's hold over Demerzel. Demerzel admits that she does want this cycle to end, but also lets them know that she's forced to preserve the genetic dynasty, and her programming would force her to destroy Dusk and Rue if they tried to reprogram her. It's at this moment that Dusk realizes that it was Demerzel that hired the assassins to attack Brother Day at the beginning of the season. And she admits that she did so in order to frame Queen Sareth to prevent her marriage to Brother Day. We then switch back to that, ironically, snitch Markley, who is leading the charge to arrest Sareth on charges of treason for the attempted murder of Brother Day. Rue starts to realize that things are getting desperate and suggests that Demerzel wiped their memories, but Demerzel knows all about Cloud Dominion's technology to restore erased memories. Rue tries to run, but gets manhandled by Demerzel to chill out. Dusk tries to let Demerzel know that Brother Dawn doesn't know what's going on in this room, but Demerzel calls out the fact that she knows that Dusk and Dawn have been auditing their memories, and that Brother Dawn is knocking boots with Queen Sareth. Dusk, seemingly giving up, walks up close to Demerzel, lovingly, and caresses her neck, and tells her that he forgives her as he seemingly hugs her goodbye. And Demerzel starts tearing up as she remembers Dusk as a baby, as she raises all the Cleons and becomes a maternal figure to them all. For all of them, She then cries a little more as she walks closer towards them, and the camera cuts away, sparing us the massacre. We next see Demerzel exiting the room, but interestingly enough, we don't see the bodies. Now, anyone that is a fan of cinema knows that there are unwritten rules to movies and television. One of the major rules, and we saw that with Hari, is that characters usually aren't gone unless another character discovers the body and confirms that they're gone. Something I also found very interesting about this scene is that as Demerzel was leaving the room, she flicked her hand and reactivated the laser cage. Now, if you remember, when Dusk and Rue first entered the room, the laser cage was off. So why did Demerzel turn it back on? Anyway, Demerzel then leaves the room looking heartbroken. We then switch back to what's left of Terminus as Brother Day is standing and looking happier than a pig in poop at the destruction of the first FANdation. But Day isn't done. Bell begins to order the crew to return to Terminus, but Brother Day still has that Black Air Force One energy and asks Brother Constant to name all of the planets that the FANdation persuaded to side with them against the Empire. I mean, my guy is being sadistic, and it feels like he's just doing this to torture Brother Constant. Brother Constant names all 7 planets: Thespis, Anacreon, Smyrno, Seychelles, Kono, Darabo, and Glypto 4, with Brother Day throwing in Sawena for shits and giggles. But Day then orders Bell to navigate to Thespis as he intends to destroy all 7 planets that sided with the FANdation. Bell tries to talk some sense into Day, like he actually tries this time, and as he tries to make some sense, Day just pip smacks Bell Rios in front of his whole crew. Bell still tries to refuse the order, and Day tries to relieve Bell from command. He taunts him a bit to do something about it, and then proceeds to pull rank on the crew of the ship and orders them to jump the fleet to Thespis immediately. Or Day is going to execute every sailor on this ship. The crew begins to regretfully comply when, Space Ghost power bands start glowing. And the most unexpected thing happens when we see all of Empire's fleets. All the ships, they're all being destroyed. One by one. There's just a wave of space fire. Me and Day are confused until She Bends Light, the spacer that's on Bell's ship, explains that the Imperial jump ships are now jumping into the space occupying the ship next to them, causing a chain reaction that will continue until the entire fleet is destroyed. Oh, and the lifeboats, landing bays, and the launches have all been disabled. Nobody's leaving. Holber then starts talking smack about how the whole thing was a trick set up by the great Hari Seldon, and the Spacers played their part by getting Holber on the ship with Brother Day. And when he starts talking smack, I mean he's laying the smack it down, with Brother Day suffering a brutal verbal assault. Left without a comeback, Brother Day decides to solve this problem with his fists and starts laying the smack it down for real. And Holber is just getting knocked around. He's getting knocked left, he's getting knocked right, he's smashing his head onto the turnbuckles and everything. Holber is able to get in a good hit, and Day does like a Thanos laugh, of disappointment that Holber did all that for one measly drop of blood. Brother Day then goes full Agent Smith and mercilessly starts beating the crap out of Holber, even taunting Constant to watch this. And this goes on for a while until finally, General Bell Rios has had enough and finally gives Brother Day the hands that we all know that he so richly deserves. And we see an epic fight with Glaywin showing Day the moves that he learned while fighting for his life on a prison planet. But I gotta admit that Brother Day ain't no chump, and he has shown us that he's an extremely capable fighter in his own right. Day and Glaywin go at each other like Wolverine and Sabretooth, with each of them beating the bloody hell out of each other. And it's not long before they're both their faces are broken. They're a bloody mess. Until Brother Day finally gets the upper hand when he uppercut flips Bell like It's like a Randy Orton RKO and judo toss. And this puts Day into position to break Glaywin's arm and toss him into an airlock. Thank you, Adventures in Portland. And Day is ready to end the story of Bel Rios as he presses the button and ejects Bel into space when it looks like there's like a glitch in the Matrix, because all of a sudden, Glaywin looks like he has long hair and Day looks like Glaywin, and Day got ejected. Day got ejected. Day got ejected. He got body swapped. Bel did it. Bel sits down to catch his breath and shares with Holber that he used the castling device and was able to swap places with Day after he slipped the device on him during the fight. And listen, I know we all saw the clues that the castling device was going to come back into play one way or another, but wow, I did not see this coming. Finally, that bitch ass is yesterday. And here I thought that Becky taking a chomp out of him would be the most satisfying fight of this season, when all along, that was just foreshadowing of how mortal Brother Day really is. Glaywin then convinces the guards to back down as everyone starts to make peace with the fact that they're still all gonna die, because the jump ships jumping into each other are still jumping into each other. Holber starts making plans for his last moments alive and starts talking about finally drinking that sunny wine he's been carrying around. We then switch back to Trantor, where we see Queen Sarah still under arrest as she's being escorted to an unknown location by Demerzel and an army of goons. Brother Dawn sees the parade and rushes over, demanding answers from Demerzel. And I gotta say that Demerzel has the most annoyed, pissed off, disappointed parent look on her face that I ever did see. She just looks so disgruntled. She painfully tells Brother Dawn that irrefutable evidence has been discovered linking Cloud Dominion to the attack on Brother Day's life at the beginning of the season. She tries to assure Dawn that this is for his own good, when she turns her head for a sec and inadvertently gives Dawn a glimpse of some green paint on Demerzel's neck. And it's in this moment that we get a reminder about the green paint on the neck of Emperor Aldrin on the Mural of Souls, and its symbolism is to represent the mark of a betrayer. And we see that Brother Dusk snuck this mark on the neck of Demerzel while saying his last goodbyes in that prison underneath the castle. And real quick, as much as I love to hate Brother Day and by extension Dawn and Dusk, I have to admit that these are some cunning mofos. Like, they are on some next level tactician stuff, because Brother Dusk was so quiet in his strategy in that basement. Day and Dusk have shown several times this season that they could correctly determine certain circumstances and predict people's actions based on their motivations. The fact that Dusk was able to do something so subtle and so slick to Demerzel without her being aware is incredible, and is a testament to just how smart the genetic dynasty actually is when they put their minds to it. I know. But I gotta give credit where credit is due, right? Dawn sees the green mark and backs down, telling Demerzel that they can catch up in his room later, and leaves. Demerzel sees a mirror a few steps away and notices the green paint on her neck, and then sighs in frustration. We then switch back to space, where we see the annihilation of fire still making its way to Bel Rios' ship. I'm still a little weirded out by seeing Bel walking around in Brother's Day chainmail's 80 punk rock group outfit. Like, the outfit was already a bit much when Lee Pace was rocking it, but Lee pulled it off with an aura of arrogance that kind of made it work. I forgive Bel in this moment, but I gotta say that this isn't my favorite look for him. Bel leads Holber and Constant to a last resort pod that's actually just normally used for maintenance and cleaning of the ship, but there's enough oxygen in the spacecraft to last a person for a day. Brother Constant and Holber then start to say their heartfelt goodbyes as Holber convinces Constant that the Foundation needs her to survive and that Holber's job is done. And I'm not crying. Holber and Constant kiss goodbye with Brother Constant teasing us one last time that Holber still hasn't guessed her name. She says her name is Hope, with me and Holber feeling like that's a poetically appropriate name. With Holber asking if that's really her name, and then she goes, no, and fakes us all out. Yo, I laughed for a second, but I can't lie that I'm a little salty that she didn't use this moment to tell us her real name. Constant enters the ship and starts making me tear up again and ejects out of the ship to give her at least a chance to survive the oncoming destruction. We then switch back to the palace where we see Queen Sareth being kept in her room with 2 guards standing watch. And before we know it, we see Brother Dawn doing his best Solid Snake impersonation and sneaking out of the servants' tunnels with a knife. And he immediately takes out one of the guards with a knife to the neck. The other guard is able to hit Dawn with a stun gun and knock him to the ground when Sareth sees the knife that Dawn was using go flying into her reach, and she finishes the job by taking out the second guard. Sareth stops to ask, where's Rue? But Dawn uses that genius tactical mind of his and lets Sareth know that if Rue is with Dusk, then it's a wrap for her, with Dawn leading them on a dash and escape through the servants' tunnels. We then switch back to Belle's ship, where it looks like the entire crew has abandoned ship, with Holber and Glaywin musing on their last moments alive with each other, and they start exchanging a toast goodbye and finally drinking that wine that Holber has been carrying. And we finally learn that the wine tastes like shit. Yo, this made me smile with Glaywin remarking that the wine tastes like pouring one more out for Becky because she went out like a G. We then switch back to Trantor, where we see Empress Demerzel being debriefed on the destruction of the Imperial fleet with no chance of survivors. Demerzel is losing it as she's visibly shaken up by the events. And all of a sudden, that lieutenant woman from earlier in the season, you know the one, the lady that snitched on Polly and Constant when they first came to Trantor, she comes rushing in the room with urgent news that Demerzel must see right now. She takes the remote from Demerzel and turns on Brother Dawn and Queen Sareth, who are live streaming to the entire galaxy. Dawn announces to the Empire that Brother Day is dead and that he will take Day's place. And he announces that he's also going to be taking his bride in Queen Sareth. The people seem to cheer and support the move, with Demerzel making plans to handle them later, privately, on her own. When we see another Matrix glitch, and Demerzel notices the glitch too, because that's not really Dawn, and that's not really Sareth. That's Handman Han and another servant of Cloud Dominion using the facial scrambling tech that changes the way you look. Suddenly, Demerzel receives a transmission from Brother Dawn, with Demerzel immediately asking for him to drop his location. Dawn tells Demerzel that he knows that she killed Dusk, and wonders if she killed Brother Day as well. She claims she didn't kill Day, but Dawn has got one more before she has to take action against his ass too, but make sure to say that it's because her programming will mandate it when something really interesting happens. Brother Dawn asks Demerzel if there's any room for interpretation in her programming. Dawn then debates that if Dawn and Sareth were killed, wouldn't it make the people turn against the Empire? He argues that the people already know that Demerzel drove them out, and is hunting them down would make it worse. Demerzel reminds him that he's replaceable and is ready to take another Brother Dawn out of the plastic, and the old one will be forgotten faster than a Hollywood scandal. Sareth argues that they have a pretty compelling story with how the ascending emperor is escaping with his bride and his naturally conceived heir that's growing inside of her, much to the surprise of Brother Dawn. Demerzel tries to simplify the situation and claims that the air is merely a cluster of dividing cells and how there's much that can go wrong. And even if the child survives, it might be weak and an unfit leader. Brother Dawn then tells Demerzel that he hopes that even though she is hard to read, that he still loves her. And he appreciates her. And he hopes that she's happy for him and his new family. Demerzel breaks down as she is absolutely the maternal figure for all of the genetics dynasty, acting as this motherly figure when they have none. And it looks like she lets them leave. We then switch back to the planet Ignis, where we see Salvor playing with her coin and seemingly able to access her powers again to predict the outcome of the flip. We also get a good look at her coin when she calls cats in the air. She also explains that the cat on her coin is a bishop's claw, the same lizard cat thing as Becky. Aw. Hari and Gale are seemingly catching their breath after beating the brakes off Telembon with the Mentalics, now on their best behavior, and seemingly washing Hari's wounds as he sits. Hari and Gale begin talking about the long life that Telembon lived and all the victims in her path as she jumped from body to body to body to body, when all of a sudden, the camera has like woozy eyes, and we see the edges of the screen are slightly out of focus, with my guy young Sheldon looking very, very, very off. Gale asks Josiah if he's okay, and he starts to explain something is wrong, when out of nowhere he just stops talking, gets up, walks over to pick up a weapon, and points it at Gale. When we hear Telem's voice, she's saying, "I'm sorry, child," and prepares to take out Gale. But by the grace of the seer, Warden Salvor is able to see what's going down just in time to whip out that knife. You know, that knife that Rach used to kill Hari, and she John Wicks the shit into young Sheldon's chest, immediately ending the threat of Telembon once and for all, which Josiah is going with her, and he started explaining that Telem was hiding in his head the whole time. And Hari figures out that Telem must have jumped bodies when she was dying. Josiah claims he can actually feel Telem inside of him, dying. But that's not the problem, because Salvor took the blaster to the belly for Gale. And no, Salvor, no. And she goes, Mom. And I'm not crying. Salvor lays bleeding out in Gale's arms as she quickly says her goodbyes, and she dies in her mother's arms. And poor Gale, damn. I really didn't see this coming. I don't even... We didn't see a funeral for Salvor, with her body wrapped in robes, and the Mentalics and Gale and Hari, they're giving Salvor a Viking's funeral as her body is cremated in front of everyone. And we see that Salvor is really gone. We then switch back to space, where we see Brother Constant and her tiny spaceship floating all alone as the entire Imperial fleet is now gone. Brother Constant is running low on oxygen, but is still continuing her prayers when she suddenly hears a sound outside, and we see the vault, Hari Black's vault. It survived, and it's in space, and it takes in Constant's ship. As Constant exits her ship into the infinite space within the vault, there's more. We see Polly, Polly's alive. He asks about the whereabouts of Holber, and Constant lets him know that Holber didn't make it. When we see Hari Black walk up to them and let them know that not only was this it was always part of the plan to sacrifice Terminus, but also that the Foundation would survive within the vault. And we see a huge number of people of the first Foundation walking out of the shadows, confirming that they survived the destruction of Terminus, including Belle's husband Glaywin, and Constance's brother and father. They made it too. Glaywin, Seth, Polly. Hari Seldon, you are a freaking genius. You're gonna do that this whole time? We then switch back to Ignis, where we see Gale reading the Prime Radiant and assessing the timeline for upcoming crises to see if Sauber's death had an impact on the plan. Hari tries to console Gale and keeps it mathematical, but math can't heal Gale's broken heart. Hari then stops being so walled off and actually opens up a bit when he tells Gale about the death of his Yana and their unborn child. He then advises Gale to use that pain, use it to give her strength, and tries to warn her that there will be more losses along the way. Hari then says something heartfelt when he admits, "I keep going because Yana can't," and then confirms to Gale that the plan can still work. We then switch back to Trantor, where we see Demerzel warming up the decanter and releasing a brand new Brother Dawn, Brother Day, and Brother Dusk, all at the same time. And this whole scene looks creepy as what, with Demerzel at the controls of the computer. As she presses the button, they all take a step forward in unison. She has them walking and talking like remote control zombies, confirming that they know who they are. And they know who she is. She is Demerzel, and she's always been there, as she always will be. We see that the memory doohickeys are glowing as if she's making adjustments to their memories in real time, and tells them that even though it's unprecedented that she's had to decant all three of them at the same time, that they shouldn't be discouraged, as she now has a new tool to help them shape their future. And she whips out Hari's Prime Radiant that she took from the vault. Oddly enough, Demerzel even shows some proficiency with the Prime Radiant and activates it like a G. Dusk is curious if she can understand what she's seeing, and she admits that she can't understand all of it, but give her some time. She can already see that wonderful things lie ahead. We then switch back to Ignis, where we see Hari and Gale plotting their next move, with Hari telling Gale that she needs to go into the future and face the mule, while Hari stays behind and trains the X-Men and becomes the new Professor X. This all sounds good, but Gale is not really on board with the plan because she's not cool with the idea of doing anything alone. She then pleads with Hari that they work together and begs Hari, her only surviving family member, to come with her. She also hints at something really interesting when she says, if there's a chance of a confrontation with another Hari Seldon at a crisis beyond that, then we know that Harry White is the only person up to the task. And did they just kind of hint at season 4? That feels like a hint about the plot of season 4, with us possibly seeing Harry Black versus Harry White. Hold that thought. We then see the Mentalics, and they're carrying Gale and Harry's cryopods into the main chamber as Hari and Gale prepare to enter cryosleep. And we get some heartwarming flashbacks of Raish and Yana being the last thoughts on their minds as they enter cryosleep to face the mule 150 years in the future. And that weird blonde girl with the neck tattoo seeming taking a leadership role among the Mentalics as they all bow down in front of the cryopods. We then switch to 150 years in the future, and we see the mule. And he's talking to himself like a Looney Tune locked in Arkham Asylum. He starts mumbling about how he saw her, and She visited him 1,000 times in 1,000 dreams. And now she's how he has to find a way to destroy Gail Dornick before she finds him. And then, end credits. And wow. This was an amazing episode. FANdation. I wasn't ready for this season to be so damn good. There's so much to unpack here. So much has happened. Demerzel has a prime radiant. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, it should be a good thing for the FANdation because we learned this season that the prime radiant can exist in multiple places at the same time and could possibly be used as a tool for the FANdation to spy on the Empire. Maybe? But Demerzel was looking real optimistic about the future on her side. Also, I think we'll see Brother Constant again. We know that she was picked up and rescued by Harry Black in the first FANdation, and this show has taught us throughout the season that humans can live exceptionally long lives, as Polly was shown to be well over 100 years old when we met up with him at the beginning of the season. Something tells me we'll see Brother Constant again in Season 3. But possibly also maybe with a little Holber Jr.? Maybe? We'll see what happens as we have a foundation of people that are actually being led by a Hari Seldon over the next 150 years, rather than just being guided. What will Hari do now that the Spacers aren't helping Empire, and he has unfettered access to continue to recruit planets to his cause in this sector of space? Also, are we going to get 2 Brother Days or Dusks in Season 3? It seems like this particular Brother Dawn from this season might have survived and escaped Demerzel with his unborn child and bride. I wonder if Dawn might be able to live as long as Polly, and if so, then there's a chance that we might see an older Dawn return next season as a Brother Dusk. Or better yet, maybe a new Brother Darkness that will return to rebel against the Empire. What if they're able to return to Cloud Dominion and align them with the FANdation to rebel against the Empire? That I would love to see. Also, I can't help but wonder if Demerzel even realizes that the Spacers have turned against Empire. I mean, she wasn't there to see how it all went down, and there's a chance that she didn't get any of that vital information that they were betrayed. If Demerzel doesn't know, then that would be a huge tactical advantage for the FANdation. And what is Demerzel going to do with the Prime Radiant? And why is she so giddy about the future? I know a few people noticed that Demerzel mentioned in an earlier episode that within her is the secret to creating more robots. She also mentioned that a lot of robots went into hiding at the end of the Robot War. And these breadcrumbs, they could be what the writers are leaving on purpose, and it makes me wonder, whose side is Demerzel really on? She can make more robots and she knows there are robots in hiding? I mean, we know that there are robots in hiding because we actually saw a planet of robots earlier this season when Harry White got his new body. Harry followed the instructions of the Calais Prime Radiant hologram that appeared before him when he was in the Prime Radiant to a planet that didn't contain any life on it and was only inhabited by what looked like construction machines. Interestingly enough, those machines were extremely hostile toward living creatures and tried their absolute best to destroy Gale, Salborg, and Harry White at the first sign that there was an organic living creature on the surface of their planet. As if they had secrets and didn't want any survivors or witnesses that could figure out that they were there. I still don't know what Callie's plan is, and I still think it was very sus that we saw her appear outside the Prime Radiant back on that planet when she cloned a new body for Harry. She seems like she has her own motives, and we have no idea what they are. Harry White doesn't fully trust her, and he was very concerned when she stated that she was deeply invested in the future of mankind rather than the survival or safety or betterment of mankind. I can't help but wonder what's going on with this machine subplot that's going on in the galaxy. Like, are we really setting up the Matrix? Like, what the F is going on there? You know what? Why not ask showrunner, writer, and co-creator David Goyer? Thank you so much. I'm. If you're ready, I am ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I know how valuable your time is. I'll try to be as brief as possible. And congratulations. Congratulations for pulling off a hat trick and delivering a sequel of the season, in my opinion, that supersedes its predecessor. Like, I really love this season of FANdation in ways I didn't think it was possible. Like, for me, this is up there with like my Game of Thrones and my Mad Men. I'm just like one of those. It's like one of the best things to me on television. So thank you for making that for us, and congratulations.
Well, that's a nice bit of congratulations to hear this morning. And it's a pleasure to be on your show. A friend of mine sent me a link to your show, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, and love your enthusiasm, and we're really happy with this season. We set out kind of across the board when we finished season 1 to say, how can we do better? Mm-hmm. How can we maximize, take the things that are working and maximize that, and adjust, some of the things that aren't. And, with season 2, with our returning cast, we knew them, so we were able to write to their strengths. And I saw that Lee was good at a little bit of comedy, so we did more of that. And also, there was some necessary exposition that we had to lay, groundwork for in season 1 that we had to get through. But it's really gratifying to me that the audience seems to be embracing season 2 the way that you have, and it's cool. It's fun.
So FANdation is a project that I'd known to have been in development as a project for film for years and years, and it was going to be a film. Can you tell us what the initial reaction was to your pitch and the direction that you chose to take with your adaptation as a TV series?
Yeah, so it had been kicking around ever since I started in the industry, and it was offered to me a couple of times to develop as a feature, and I passed on it twice because I just didn't think you could boil it all that into a movie or even 3 movies. And once Game of Thrones came out, it was kind of an aha experience for me, because Game of Thrones, I think, really changed the game, no pun intended, with the possibilities for kind of much more novelistic storytelling, and with the advent of streaming and these much more cinematic shows. And so I thought that for the first time, FANdation might be possible, but at the time, I think it was being developed at HBO. And I was working with David Ellison at Skydance, and actually James Cameron. We were working on that most recent Terminator movie, and David Ellison, who's a big science fiction fan, came in and said, the rights to FANdation are in play. They've lapsed at HBO. Are you interested? And I was like, ooh, oh my God. Is it a streaming show? Yes, it's a streaming show. And I remember James Cameron looking at me and saying, FANdation, whoa, that's hard. And thinking, if James Cameron thinks it's hard, and David Ellison said, there are 12 different entities and studios that are throwing their hats in the ring, and we got to know by tomorrow, and think about it overnight, and think about, really quickly, what are some of the things that you would do, and then we'll get on the phone with Robin Asimov, Isaac Asimov's daughter, and do a quick pitch. And we did, and we got it. We beat out all the other suitors, and then suddenly I was like, oh crap, now I actually have to do it. And I remember saying to my wife at the time, wow, this one's really going to test me. This one's really complicated and hard. And at the time, it had started developing the series with a guy named Josh Friedman, who was involved in the first couple episodes, and then he ultimately bowed out. And it has been hard. It's been the hardest thing I've ever worked on in my entire life. And for all of the reasons that are apparent, but but then it's gratifying that, like, I just feel like we laid a lot of groundwork in season 1, and all of that started to pay off in season 2.
So I'm really curious, like, how do you find your balance? Like, do you have a friend or a muse that you bounce your thoughts off of? Like, how do you find your balance in bringing your own vision and interpretation of the world of FANdation while staying true to, Asimov's vision?
It's a delicate balance. Not all of the writers on the show are really steeped in science fiction by design, because we want writers from comedy and from drama, because it's got to work as a drama. The comedic moments have to work. So there's really myself and one other writer that are much more steeped in the books, but in between seasons we reread the books again, and we talk about, there are two audiences. There's the die-hard Asimov book audience. There's a much broader audience of people that have never read the books and are probably never going to read the books, and maybe don't even consider themselves fans of science fiction. And we have to hold both of those in mind. And the other big adaptation element was the original books are so episodic. The first book is just an omnibus of short stories. Most of the characters don't continue from one story to the next. And so you just have to take what you think are key themes and the key characters and boil them down and think, how do I expand those while not betraying the core elements of those? And so one of the things, and Apple and other streamers, they weren't interested in doing an anthology. So in the case of us, I said, well, how do the Empire, they exist in the background in the original books, but they're not a huge presence after the first short story. And I said, well, that's not going to work. If the whole story is about the Empire falling and what's going to replace it, then we need a face of the Empire to continue throughout the show. And we need a face to continue from century to century. And that led to this aha idea that Josh Friedman and I came up with of, what if they're clones? And again, it comes from the story, because the whole idea of FANdation is that the Empire is resistant to change. They're like freeze. They don't want to let go, and they're brittle. And so we thought, well, what's the purest expression of that? If one guy keeps cloning himself over and over and over again, that's like the ultimate person that doesn't want to change, and like literally. And so what came out of a way of like, well, how do we keep some of the characters continuing from season to season, became a way to express the theme. And then it led to all of these amazing kind of interpersonal dramas between the different clones and them wanting to individuate. So it all starts from story. Another example was in the books, Hari is just a recording. AI was not a thing that existed in the late 40s or early 50s when Asimov was writing. I think if AI had existed back then, he would have had Hari continue on as an AI, but he's not even interactive. They're just straight recordings when he comes out of the vault. And I said, well, surely he's going to be interactive. And if he's going to be interactive, that means that Hari Seldon continues on as a character. And when you have an actor like Jared Harris, you want to keep using Jared Harris. And so then that led to, well, what does that mean to a character if he continues? And what does that mean to an AI? In a way, Hari is doing the same thing that Empire is doing, which means they're sort of mirrors of one another. And so all of these things that were born out of necessity, how do we keep some of the same faces, from season to season, led to these really juicy storytelling moments.
Now, you touched on a lot of different things there. We're talking about Jared, we're talking about Hari, but you also talked a little bit about the origin of the Cleons and the genetic dynasty. Can you talk about the casting of Lee Pace? Like, what was it that he did in the audition that drove everyone to make, the correct choice in casting him as Brother Day?
First of all, Lee did not audition. Lee was an offer.
Oh, okay.
We were thinking Lee and Jared were offers. Everyone's auditioned. Jared, when we were first writing the season, I do what I call fantasy casting, and I put up like a picture of like in my perfect world, this is the person that would play Hari Seldon. And I had Jared Harris on the wall in our writer's room in season 1. And I think I was watching The Terror season 1. Chernobyl hadn't come out yet. And I've, of course, seen him in Mad Men. And I thought that's my North Star for Hari Seldon. So it's amazing that we got him. And you won't believe this, but I had a picture of Lee Pace up for Day as well, because he's like this amazing alpha male. He's 6'5", he's imposing, he's handsome, he already looks like a Greek god, he looks like Apollo. And I thought he just seems like the perfect embodiment of Empire. And again, this never happens, but we went out to both of them. They were the first people we went out to for the roles, and we got both of them. And I had been a fan of Lee for a long time, and I felt like he was an actor that he'd been in Pushing Daisies, and he was Ronan the Accuser, but I think a lot of people didn't even register that was him in Guardians of the Galaxy. And he played, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the Elf Lord in the Hobbit films. But again, he had a bunch of makeup. I'm not sure people registered that was him, and he'd been a wonderful show that didn't have a large viewership called *Halt and Catch Fire*. He was like an actor's actor that I knew was really good, but hadn't really acquired, no pun intended, like with a mainstream audience. But I knew if he was given the right role, and I felt this was the role, he would just tear things up. And Lee felt the same thing. He said, I was born to play this role. And I feel like he was.
I love that. Working with such talented people, working with the Jareds, working with Lou, working with Lee, what was your favorite scene to film, either this season or last?
Well, there's no question one of my favorite scenes to film this season was the scene in episode 9 when Seldon and Day confront one another, or a different Day confront one another in the vault, because that was something that we'd been building to from the very first episode of season 1. And I knew when we sat down to beat out season 2 that I wanted Day to go to Terminus. I wanted to get Day into the vault and have this confrontation between the two. So that was, honestly, that was one of the first scenes that we wrote, even though it was in episode 9. We just knew that we were leading towards that, because I had always pitched the show to Apple as a 1,000-year chess game between Hari Seldon and Empire. Mm-hmm. And so, believe it or not, that scene in episode 9 is still only like a third of the way into that chess game. There's still many moves to come. And so that was, with question, a scene that I really wanted to do. The short film in episode 9 with Demerzel, where we reveal more of her origin, is something that I always wanted to do. And Harry's backstory in episode 6 was something that I'd always wanted to do. And of course, the Sky Bridge fall in season 1 was something that was massive, and we filmed over months and months and months. There were so many different components to that. It just took forever to film.
I love your excitement when you're talking about this. And I've heard you in another interview talking about that exchange with Day and Hari in the vault. I think it was with Pete Peppers. And, in that scene, I thought it was just very, very, first off, it was just arresting. Like, I just could not turn away. I just enjoyed watching that. But in that scene, Hari, he offered Day the Prime Radiant. He offers to teach Demerzel how to read it. Day delivers a line indicating that he doesn't like the idea of AI passing a computer from one AI to another.
Yeah.
Did you create that line? Because I'm curious, because of everything that's going on in just in the news these days. It kind of felt like meta commentary. Can you just talk about that line a little bit?
Well, the sad truth is, I don't remember which of us wrote that line, because there's no question that whoever's name is on the episode, usually they wrote the bulk of the line, but all of us have our fingerprints on every single episode. And sometimes I'll rewrite a scene, or another writer will rewrite a scene. I think that particular episode was written 9 by Jane Espenson and Eric Carrasco. We break out the story together as a group, and then we polish the scripts as a group. We room them. We actually go as a group through each script after we've gone through a few drafts, line by line, and debate. Sometimes 8 of us, every single line, and how can we beat this? And so it's hard to know where the individual line sometimes came from, but it's, as we were writing season 2, ChatGPT was coming out, and Midjourney, which is a sort of image sharing AI, was coming out, and it was becoming more and more topical. And robots were already a thing in the show, so there's no question that we added that because it was becoming more relevant and imitating art. And that's the thing. Good science fiction works as a metaphor. It shines a mirror back on what's happening today. And so when Asimov was writing in the late 40s, early 50s, he was writing in a Cold War environment. He was writing about a post-World War II environment, and these anxieties of, Nazi Germany falling and whether or not that would have a resurgence. And so it's always important to look at what are the anxieties that are happening today and see how we can touch upon those thematically and update some of the social concerns. And AI, there's no question AI is one of them, and became only more relevant as we were writing the show.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. I was very curious about that. Just thinking about the scenes of this season, there's so many powerful scenes. Can you describe a scene that was difficult for you or the cast or the production to film, and why?
I mean, one of the most difficult scenes to film was the execution and potential execution and then rescue of Constant in episode 8. We filmed that in the Canary Islands in Tenerife, and it was actually right by the ocean. So at the edge of the banister where it seems like we're 1,000 feet up, the surf is right there. So everything beyond that banister is CG. And we had to, it was in this plaza inside an opera house. It was incredibly hot. It was, 90, 95 degrees over the course of 4 or 5 days that we were filming. And so much was going on. We had a lot of extras. We had stunts. It had to be really careful with our stunts because it's like a national landmark. And it was enormously complicated. I think we spent 4 full days rehearsing that sequence. We were at that opera house for about 2 weeks, and we staged it like a war. Everything was storyboarded, everything was previs, and you have so many characters that you have to check in with at that scene, and that was just phenomenally complicated. The other one that was really complicated was all the stuff in the first episode with Hari inside the Prime Radiant. We had 4 different sets. Some of them had mirrors, and we had to digitally erase the crew and the reflections. Some of the sets tilted, and Harris was actually in a safety harness, and so they inverted and went upside down, and that was just really a mind bender to figure out how to shoot all of those. That's the thing, is there are very few just simple scenes in a show like this. And then the sequences in The Beggars for episodes 2 and 3 that I directed on Uda's World, and then the Escape from Synax, that was really complicated. That we were on a set at gimbal back and forth, and then we had an LED wall outside with waves, and then we built an exterior section of The Beggar's Lament out in a parking lot and shot at night, and we had rain cannons going and all sorts of that was incredibly complicated as well. That was a real slog.
Is Tellenbond the mule?
I can't answer that. It certainly seems like she's dead. I think that's been ruled out.
Had to ask. Salvor Hardin. Now, Salvor Hardin's apparent death at the end of season 2, that was a surprising twist. Like, I don't think many people are going to see that coming. So, Out of her death, we see a strengthened bond and emotional interdependence between Gale and Hari. Can we expect to see more of this dynamic of Hari and Gale bonded together as a family by the way of Salvor and Raish in season 3?
Yeah, that was part of the goal with Hari's character this season, was to dimensionalize him, to take him down from this pedestal and get his feet dirty and get him emotional and learn about his interior life, and also repair the relationship between him and Gale. She's kind of one of the only people probably in the galaxy that really understands him, and vice versa. So he plays such an amazing character in season 1, but he's very aloof, and you don't get much of a glimpse of his interior life or his feelings. And so that was something we were really going for this season. And that's Salvor's sacrifice. Look, we'd faked out the audience a bit in terms of Hari's death. But we also knew that the fans would assume Salvor in particular had plot armor, because he's supposed to die in the future, that would happen. And look, I adore Leah Harvey as a person. I adore Salvor as a character. It just felt like it was the right thing to do for the story. You know, her sacrifice means that the future isn't written in stone, and that humanity can survive. That even though the odds are really long, and even though it looks like the mule is going to upset everything, that there's a chance. And I think that's what's exciting for me when I watch a show, if I don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes that means you have to goodbye to characters that you love. I adore Bell and Hober. I didn't want to say goodbye to them either, but it felt right for the story. You have to break some hearts. And, you know, I think 9 was a shocking episode, but in its own way, 10 was maybe more shocking, given how many deaths ended up happening with main characters in 10.
Yeah. I really love the concept of Calais, the mathematician in the Prime Radiant in season 2. And also, real quick, I love the diversity. I don't know if you're getting that acknowledgement and appreciation enough, so I just need to say this. Thank you. I never knew as a kid how much it affected me as a person until I got older and I began seeing more and more positive representation on TV. And FANdation has it. It's absolutely, thank you. But that means,
well, no, thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me. And it was a very intentional choice when I started developing the show, because I was aware of the fact, particularly in science fiction and in fantasy, that it's, tends to be dominated by white men. Not always, but less so with people of color. And I just thought we had a really special opportunity here. And so diversity has been, it's best actor wins, but we cast a wide net. I mean, we had casting directors in India, we had casting directors in Japan, casting directors in Africa. We have our main casting directors. We probably have at least half a dozen different casting directors around the world. And I'm just constantly saying, bring us people we haven't seen before. And in almost every case, it doesn't matter if they're male or female or what their heritage is. But look, thanks for saying that. That means a lot to me.
Thank you. That being said, will we see more of Calais in season 3?
Yes.
Now, Calais made Hari human, right? In this season, we also see Hari and Gale acknowledge each other as family by way of Raish and his daughter Salvor. Hari refers to Salvor as his granddaughter. Are those two things related? Like, was it because Hari became human that he was able to acknowledge and develop these ideas and feelings towards Salvor and Gale?
I think so. There's an exchange between Salvor and Hari. Look, he always had feelings. I mean, we see that in episode 6 in his backstory. But I think once he lost Yana and his unborn child, I think he bottled off that side of him. And he just said, I don't want to go there anymore. I think he went to Raish, but with everyone else, he just didn't want to open up his heart. And he wanted to hide behind his math and use that as a justification for everything. I think it was just too emotionally painful for him. And I think now that opened up something inside of him. And Selver says there's this whole, they debate, why you had immortality, someone put you back in a mortal body again. Why would they do that? And Selver says, I think someone wanted you to have skin in the game. And I will say, without revealing too much, there is something to that. There is Selver was onto something. And so the question is, who and why would they want Harry human again? And not just flesh and blood in terms of the fact that he's vulnerable, but human in terms of him being connected to his emotions.
Okay. Now, I know your time is valuable. I'm gonna start to wrap up. What is Brother Constance's name? Or at least is there a chance for us to find out?
Man, no.
Yes.
Never gonna reveal her real name. I know some people were disappointed with that, but I think it's fun. We're never gonna know.
Okay. Now, I do have a couple of questions from the fans. I'm going to try to shoot these at you rapid fire.
Go for it.
Will we see more murals from the Mural of Souls in future episodes?
Yes, without question.
Okay. Demerzel tells Helena that she also doesn't have an individuated existence. Is that statement related to her programming and duties to Empire, or is it a remnant of the robotic civilization, meaning like the multiple lives she's lived in the past? Sorry,
that's kind of, no, it's okay. That's kind of verging into spoiler territory. The intention is we will be exploring all of that a lot in season 3 and what it means when she says her consciousness is distributed, and we will be exploring a bit more of her past and her internal life in season 3. That's certainly the intention. And we haven't said goodbye to Luminism either. That's something that's going to circle back into the show next season.
Are the Cleons bisexual?
Yeah, I think they're pansexual. I think they don't care. I mean, they're monsters, but they definitely don't care who you love or who you have sex with.
Next question. When can we expect to learn how was Gale able to stay awake during an interstellar jump in that first episode? Is it soon?
We'll start to answer some of that in season 3. Yes. I mean, there are definitely things that we have not answered yet, like who brought down the Star Bridge. And just because we haven't answered it doesn't mean we're not going to. It just means that we decided that we haven't hit the optimal time to reveal that. So yes, we will reveal both of those things.
Next fan question. This one, you let me know if you can answer it. Someone is putting together maybe a connection. Does Demerzel have the same chip as Helly from Severance?
No connect. We wrote, I love Severance, but we wrote season 2 long before, we were almost finished filming season 2 when Severance came out. I think we were in the last month of season 2, so it was purely a coincidence.
Is Talon the mule?
Talon Bond is not the mule.
Okay. Here's a question for me, and this is just for me because I'm just fascinated with you, honestly, and your career, and I've been following a lot of your work as a film critic for over a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the unsung hero of your career?
Wow. The unsung hero. I mean, probably my first mentor, who was a screenwriter named Nelson Gidding. I was his teaching assistant when I was at USC Film School. Nelson was an old school screenwriter. He'd served in World War II. He got shot down in World War II and was a prisoner of war. He was Jewish, and he wrote a lot of movies for Robert Weiss. He wrote The Andromeda Strain. He wrote the original Haunting, and he taught me a lot about writing and the craft of writing, but he also taught me a lot about becoming a man and becoming a human being. And he really encouraged me. He said the problem with a lot of writers is they don't have a lot of lived experiences, and Nelson had lived all over the world, and he said you really got to get out, you really got to travel. And I went to Tibet because of Nelson, and I went to Africa, and I went to Thailand and Vietnam and all these crazy places. I've probably been to at least 60 or 70 countries in the world now, and had a lot of great experiences. And you never know when those things will funnel their way back into your writing. And so he's definitely would be the unsung hero. And then, of course, my wife, who puts up with all the craziness, who travels the world with me. And she's the secret sauce for sure. I mean, every other week, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I could keep going. And she's like, you can keep going. You can handle this.
Yeah, that's the correct answer.
Yeah, I've got my wedding ring on.
I learned that you have a few plans to wrap up FANdation based on how many seasons get approved. What can fans do to make sure you get what you need besides just telling all our friends to watch? Like, does our social media reaction work? Do we
all of the above. All of the above. Social media, the biggest thing, writing Apple, without question, emailing Apple. The big thing, though, is simply telling fans, especially as we go into the holidays. A lot of people catch up on new shows over Thanksgiving and Christmas because they meet with friends and family and they say, what's the big show that I should be getting into? Just spreading the word. I mean, the show's doing really well. The audience is really built, but just, convert people, to spread the word, the Church of Galactic Spirit.
Well, thank you. I created the hashtag FANdation. I'm hoping to try to build on that and get something consistent that everybody could look at.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for your time. Again, I know you're very busy. I really appreciate you giving me your time to talk about this wonderful show. I'm looking forward to season 3. Thank you again so much. Thank you so much, David Goyer.
Thank you, and I appreciate your show and your analysis. It's super fun, and it's fun to do stuff like that. So keep doing what you do.
Thank you. Hope to speak to you again in the future. So that is everything we have for this Far Out show and this Far Out season. I want to thank all of you who joined us this season and became a member of the FANdation, and more importantly, for giving me your time. Look, I stress how important time is each time I open one of these videos, and it's because we've all lost loved ones in our lives. I lost my mother not too long ago, and I have a newfound commitment toward making sure I use my time well. I bring my mom's memory into every video, and this show has been cathartic in my grieving. I want to thank everyone for commenting and sharing your thoughts and theories, your support, and your suggestions. I really appreciate it all. Oh, and if any of y'all are coming to New York Comic Con this year, I want to see you in your FANdation cosplay. I'll be there all 4 days, so be sure to stop me and say hi if you see me. Also, shout out to Reach That For You and Mr. Ad 300 for the super thanks this season. I really appreciate you and your support and for giving me your time. Look, I'm not going to ask because I honestly forget that button was even there, but if anyone wants to use that super thanks button, go ahead. I give my video editor a tip because I appreciate all the hard work that he's been doing for us this whole season too. It's right there if you want to use it, but you don't have to. Thank you everyone for a wonderful season. I cannot wait to join you all again when we come back together in the future for season 3 of this fantastic show. Until next time, please respect and enjoy the peace.